how do I solve this? Do I set equal to 0 or to 4 or neither? And the question is, which of the following function has the domain of all real numbers except for x equals 4? Now let's go over this. Right here we have these 5 functions, and we have to first remember what the domain is. The domain is the set of all the possible input for the function, and the input is the x. And we just have to set up restrictions, and it seems that we have 2 situations that we have to consider. One is when we have the x on the bottom, and the other one is when we have x in the square root. So let me write this down right here for you. Whenever we have a rational function, top over bottom, to figure out the domain, meaning you are going to first set out the restriction, we will have to make sure that we don't have a 0 on the bottom. So right here, we will have to make sure. Again, this is how we are going to set up the restriction that will help us to find the domain. Make sure that the bottom cannot be equal to 0, because otherwise we'll be dividing by 0, and that's bad. And the other situation is that when we have a square root of an expression inside, but if you see the x inside, pay attention to it. Here, we will have to make sure that we know square root of a negative number is non-real, so we will have to make sure the inside here, we just have to set the inside to be non-negative, meaning greater than or equal to 0. Square root of 0 is okay, square root of 0.5 is okay, square root of 17 is okay, but not square root of -1, right? Otherwise, we'll be talking about imaginary numbers. So let's go back here and then just test it out. For the first one, we just have x minus 4. And there's no denominator, there's no square root, right? So there's no worry. In fact, the domain for this right here is just all real numbers. All real numbers. Because we don't have to worry about any of the restrictions. But if you take a look at the second one, we have 1 over x squared minus 16. So, by what we mentioned earlier, we will have to make sure that the bottom is not equal to 0. So we have to set x squared minus 16 is not equal to 0. And then solve it from here. We can just put the 16 to the other side and get x squared not equal to positive 16. And then take the square roots on both sides with the plus or minus on the right. Let me put it down like this. Take the square root on both sides. And then the plus or minus, this and that cancel. This tells us x cannot be plus or minus square root of 16, which is square root of 4. So these are the 2 numbers that we cannot use for this function. Well, we see the 4, but it has the -4 as well. So we have 2 restrictions. The question is only asking for 1 restriction, except for x is equal to 4. So this is not the answer either. Now for the next one, we have square root of x minus 4. Oh, we see that we have the x minus 4. Instead of the square root, we will have to apply this right here to set out the restriction. So right here, we said x minus 4 has to be greater than or equal to 0. Add the 4 to the other side, we just get x has to be greater than or equal to 4. But what does this mean though? This means x can be any number greater than or equal to 4. It cannot be negative numbers. It cannot be something less than 4. It cannot be 3. Right? It cannot be 2. It cannot be 0. So this right here is also not this. We want all real numbers except for 4. Now, if you take a look at the next one, we have 3x over 2x minus 8. We have the 2x minus 8. So we apply this right here. Let me just kind of put it like this. So look at the bottom. Make sure we have 2x minus 8. Well, we don't want it to be equal to 0. And then look at that and then we solve it. Put the 8 to the other side. We get 2x not equal to 8. And then divide both sides by 2. We get x not equal to 4. Again, after divide both sides by 2. As you can see, this right here is x can be any number except for this number 4. That's exactly what the question says. Therefore, the answer is D. The answer is D. It can be any real numbers except for 4. Be careful though. For the last one, we have x minus 4 over x. We have to remember to set out the restriction to find the domain. For this situation, is the bottom cannot be equal to 0. So this right here, x cannot be equal to 0 for that. All right. So hopefully this right here helps. And yeah, that's it.